Beets. Some people call them superfoods, others say they taste like dirt. Which side are you on? For many, the earthy flavor of beets is a deal breaker, keeping them from enjoying all the incredible health benefits this root vegetable has to offer. But what if I told you there's a way to transform that earthy taste into something tangy, delicious, and downright irresistible? Stick around. I'm sharing the ultimate pickled beet recipe that will change the way you feel about beets forever. Hi friend, come on in. I am making pickled beets today. These beets, the only thing I have done to them is I washed them and I trimmed the top off so that I've got about half an inch or probably about a centimeter or so at the top. I am going to cook these. They kind of look a little funny because they came out of my garden. Yes, it's the middle of winter. They have been wintering for a little while under a bed of leaves and they've been doing pretty good. I am going to get these cooked up. I'm going to cook them whole. I'm just going to boil them until they're tender all the way through. I have a funny story about beets, but before I get there, my beets are now tender. They are easily pierced with the knife. I am going to take them out. Options at this point, you obviously can soak these in cold water, and that will help cool them faster. I do have two that came out a little bit earlier, so I am going to show you what to do with these ones. I am going to trim them and then see how the skin just kind of peels off. You want to just kind of catch the skin with your knife and just skin it. It should pull off pretty easily, just scraping it with the knife. So you shouldn't have to like dig in too much with the knife, but sometimes I have to dig a little bit, but it should scrape off pretty easily. And we're just peeling it at this point. Don't do this with anything you don't want permanently stained. I don't know how easily beet juice comes out of anything. I have a jar here. I'm going to dice mine. You can cube it like I am, or you can just do slices. Doesn't matter. And I am just going to put them in the jar. I'm also going to drop them all over the place, apparently. It's not been a good day. Funny story, when I was growing up, I ate these beets all the time. I did not know that beets had an earthy taste to it until I left home and I was away on a business trip. I had an opportunity to eat at the salad bar, and yeah, those beets did not taste right. They were earthy. They just had no flavor to them except that earthy flavor. If you've eaten a beet, you know what I'm talking about. I could not get over how different it tasted compared to the ones that I always ate when I was growing up. So I avoid salad bar beets now, but I do like to eat these beets. They have a really nice flavor to them because of the clove, and it just masks everything, but it gives them, because there's also sugar in the pickling solution, it gives it a sweetness as well, and they're just really good. They pair really well with like a brown gravy stew. They're really good on their own too. There have been times where I would just pull out a jar from the fridge and just chow down on them. Mostly I eat them when I'm having stew, but that's not very often. My family's weird. They don't like stew. The beets are beautiful inside. I am going to clean up my mess and I will show you how to make the special sauce that gives it the flavor. I am making a small batch of pickled beets, mostly because I only had the 4 beets that came out of my garden, but I want this recipe to be accessible so that you're encouraged to try it. If you have access to, a small bunch of beets and you just want to give it a try, I don't want you to feel overwhelmed by the fact that, oh, this recipe makes like 20 jars of this. No, this is a small recipe. I have definitely scaled it back. So I put in a 1/4 cup of water. I'm putting in a 1/2 cup of just regular white vinegar. I am putting in 2 tablespoons of sugar. I will have the full recipe written out below so that if you want to make more of this, you can, but I will also have this smaller version of the recipe. Now I'm only going to put in a couple of cloves. It doesn't take much, believe me. Cloves go a long way. So I've got, what do we have here? 2, 4, 6, 8, 9. Let's make it 8. Get rid of this little tiny one. There we go, 8 cloves. I'm going to heat this up. I want the sugar to dissolve, and I also need to put in some salt. Does not call for much salt in the grand scheme of things, so I'm just going to put in probably about, that was like a quarter of a teaspoon. It's probably slightly more salt than it calls for, but it will be fine. I just want my sugar and salt to dissolve. The cloves don't necessarily have to go in here, but heating them up does help release some of the flavor. It just starts the process. If you are into canning, this can be canned. This is a water bath canned recipe. If that's something that you are interested in, just follow all the normal steps that you would do otherwise with a 1/2 inch headspace and don't overstuff with beets. I have successfully canned this in the past, and it's so nice to just be able to go in, pull one off the shelf, and just have at it whenever I want. I have learned that that's a good thing with a lot of the canning recipes. I converted one of my family's recipes for a meat pie filling. It was very special. We only made it like once a year. We ate it a couple of times a year, but it didn't last long, so you only got it a couple times, and that was it. And now I can have it on demand, and it's so fun and nice to have. If you're interested in a good meat pie recipe, I got one. This has dissolved. I am going to get this in the jar with my beets. We are going to see if 1.25 cups is, it's not 1.25 cups, it's 3/4 of a cup. That's too much. Bet you it is. Oh, look at that. I made it. This needs to marinate overnight in the fridge to allow all the flavors to penetrate into the beet and get rid of the earthy taste. I didn't know beets tasted earthy when I left home. They were gross. I am using a plastic lid. I don't want the vinegar to sort of corrode at my metal lids that go with my canning sets, so I'm using a plastic lid, and I'm just going to put this in the fridge overnight to cool down, to absorb the flavor, and basically to pickle. That's what we're doing. We're pickling these, and this is a quick pickle recipe, and I will show you what it looks like tomorrow. This is how the beets turned out. They turned out really good. 8 of the clove, that was plenty. They have a really strong flavor from the clove. That's actually something to pay attention to if you want to can these. Some people I have heard say that clove can sometimes intensify when it's being canned. I haven't noticed that, but if you're kind of sensitive to the taste of clove, you might want to back it off just a little bit when you're canning it. But right now, just doing a quick pickle like I did, where I just let it sit in the fridge for 24 hours, works really well. It's got like a nice little crunch to it. It's not super crunchy because I did cook them beforehand, but it does have a nice little snap to it. It does have a hint of sweetness because I did put a little bit of sugar in it, but it's got the sour taste from the vinegar as well. The real key is the clove masks the flavor of the earthiness that beets can have. There really is no earthy flavor to this. It really is just the clove and the vinegar. That's the main flavor you're tasting. This is really good with like a brown gravy stew. I highly recommend you try it. This was a really small batch, so if you're on the fence and you're not quite sure, but you really want to have more beets in your life, this is the best way I have found to eat beets. They are just so good. If you give this a try, let me know below what you thought of it. I have a really nice roll recipe if you're looking for rolls to go with your brown gravy stew and your beets. Go check that out. And thanks for watching.